Hi! Welcome to Let's Go Kickass today. I'm your host, Vicky Carter. This is a monthly podcast where I chat to inspirational people from the fields of music, adventure and culture. People who basically are really kicking ass and making their own rules in life. So if you want to feel empowered and inspired, you've come to the right place. In my 9th episode of Let's Go Kickass today, I chat to Naomi Liberty from Forward UK and Simon Coates from Fly about their collaborative album, These Are Our Friends, highlighting the brutality of FGM.
They basically developed a book of poems around FGM. It's a little bit broader than FGM. It's kind of about society as a whole. It's also like These Are Our Friends. It's about not othering FGM as something that happens to people in this far off country.
I also speak to Lauren Pears from Lauren's Travel Diary about cycling from London to Istanbul and what the journey was like for her.
Travel is sometimes about trying new things and opening yourself up to new experiences. And if you enjoy cycling and you enjoy travelling, I think it's something you may well enjoy.
Last but not least, I speak to Jackie Adedeji from the Big Tits podcast. She shares her journey of acceptance and self-love and what it's like to receive unwanted attention from strangers because of her big breasts.
I hate the fact that I might have to alter what I'm wearing because people are going to judge me based on what I'm wearing. I'm not defined by the clothes that I wear.
First up is Simon Coates from Fly and Naomi Liberty from Forward UK. Naomi shares what FGM actually is and how that it's all over the world, not just in the UK, and the tradition and deep-rooted gender inequality behind it. Simon shares what Fly is all about, creating a voice for those who don't have one in society or feel they are unable to express themselves freely in the country they are in, and so they're able to do so through art and experimental music. He also shares his own experiences of his work being censored in the Middle East. They come together and collaborate on a book of poetry called These Are Our Friends and how they turned this into an experimental music album.
It's exciting because you're both two incredible organisations collaborating together on a wonderful project. If it's all right with the both of you, I'd like to find out a little bit more about each of your individual organisations first, and then we can delve into the project. So Naomi, if we start with you, could you tell us what is the purpose? What does Forward UK do?
Yeah, so Forward is an African women-led organisation working to end female genital mutilation, child marriage, and various forms of violence against African women and girls. So both in the UK and in selected countries in Africa.
What is specifically FGM?
So female genital mutilation, there's various forms. Done, people say for religious reasons. It's not religious because there's no religion that endorses it. But it's basically, people liken it to male circumcision, but there's various forms from removing the hood of the clitoris to removing the clitoris, the inner labia, the labia. The most severe type is removing all of that and sewing it up, leaving a small hole. So really, the crux of why it happened is for men's pleasure and
really
also, men's pleasure and like keeping a woman and girl a virgin. So it's girls' virginity.
Oh my gosh.
That's like when you get down to it, there's lots of reasons given. It can be, some places they say if the clitoris touches a baby when it's born, it'll die. There's everything is around fear of the clitoris, so it has to be removed. But basically the point is it's about controlling women's sexuality.
You've built it down to the core, the root of the issue there.
Which is gender inequality, and it's most people know that it happens in Africa, and it happens in 29 countries in Africa, but it happens in the Middle East, Southeast Asia. They find people who have had it in like remote tribes in South America. So it's being found in different places, but ultimately always done for the same reasons. So.
And how are you combating these traditions that have been passed on from generations? Because that's a challenge, and it's international and obviously in the UK as well, like you said, but all over the world.
Yeah, so we're working. So people don't expect that it happens in the UK for a start. Well, some people deny it happens. They think that charities are just there to make money, but we know it happens because we work in schools. So we've met girls that obviously have presented that they've had it. They've discussed that, and then that's passed on to safeguarding. So we work basically across the board. So we work with communities. So working with men and women, older men and women. So, breaking down the myths, breaking down all of the health effects, the mental health effects, and why, it's something that we can move on from. It's not a part of a culture that needs to be kept. But then you're having to break down, everything around how we view girls. And, are girls only there to be married? So, you're having to go quite deep into issues. It's not something that happens overnight. Obviously, the laws help, but we've only seen one prosecution in the UK. So,
wow, when was that?
That was this year.
This year as well?
Yeah. So we work with communities, we work with young people. A lot of the work we do with young people is building them up to be activists. Same with the community. Once they've come on board and realised that FGM is not something that they want to do, and then they are trained to be activists within their community. So you reach a lot more people than we can reach of like 20 people in our office. We work in schools, training professionals as well. So we work with young people. We work training teachers, training their parents, working with police, healthcare, campaigning as well.
I'm just thinking about those women, sorry to interrupt, that you went into the schools and they stepped forward and said, yes, I have that. And they obviously thought it was a part of their family and it was normal. And then for an organisation like Forward UK to come forward and say, this is what we're stopping. I mean, do you know how they felt?
Now, actually, recently it's changed a little bit. You have less disclosures. There's less disclosures in schools because the new laws in place in the UK around FGM have made it so that professionals have to report cases of FGM. So they have to report it and record it. So if a mother has been through FGM, for example, she is kept on file as her children being at risk of undergoing FGM. And young people now know that if they disclose, it has to go through the safeguarding, it has to be reported, and a lot of them don't want their parents to go to prison. So a lot of them wouldn't say it. I think maybe a few years ago it was a little bit different. People still do say it, but they'll tend to be a little bit older so that,
they just don't want to get their parents into trouble and they think, it's just something that's practiced in my community.
It's not, even if they hate their parents for doing it, it's usually it's even though it's classed as a child abuse, it's usually a one-off abuse, as opposed to, long-term sexual abuse, for example. I mean, it is long-term, the effects, but it's like this one thing that's happened. Not always, but, it's this one thing that's happened. And a lot of the time, no, they don't really want their parents to go to prison for it.
And I guess I feel they can draw the line under them and say, well, I'm not going to push my children to do it, so I'm the last person from my family. Is that the case? Or
See, a lot of young people now, because we're working with a lot of young people, a lot of the young people are like, there's no way that we want this to happen to our children. So you are going to see, generationally things are changing, because my age group, late 30s, a lot of that age group has already decided that their children won't have it. But you'll find a lot of people, if they've come into the country, they may have already had it in their country of origin. You have to work with everybody because there's a lot of misunderstanding around it, so the support that's offered to women who have undergone it is often limited.
So the main message really behind what we do is we use our art to support human rights and freedom of speech issues. So we're quite committed to what we do as a bunch of artists in our own practice and our individual practices, and we've realised that especially if you're from the Middle East or the Indian subcontinent or certain parts of Africa, that politically you don't have much of a voice. So one way of smuggling a message out or in under the radar is to kind of package it as part of an arts project to some extent, because we formed in Dubai. So when I was living in UAE. And then we were just a bunch of artists who were sort of becalmed in that our fundamental rights as artists were censored and our freedom of speech, our ability to kind of voice our ideals were truncated. So we formed this thing called Testify Middle East, which was a club night. So we kind of hijacked the idea of a conventional club night and made it into an experimental arts night. So instead of club music, we play experimental music. Instead of watching MTV Justin Bieber videos, we play experimental art films. And it was a social thing, you know. It was a way of us all to get together and perform in a way that we felt comfortable. And it was you know, we did things like colouring in, and we made it into something that we wanted people to. I hate the phrase safe space, but it was a safe space. And then when I left Dubai in 2017, I still had this kind of notion of and continuation of Textify Middle East, because we'd built up quite a following and reputation, and people responded well to what we did. Equally, I had this other bee in my bonnet about what I'd seen in Dubai, the way that people have been treated, whether they're migrant workers, women, and so on and so forth. The human rights abuses that are continuing there in plain sight. And what frustrated me was that people were coming back from Dubai to the UK and not telling other people about it. So I had this kind of righteous indignation in my right hand. In my left hand, I had Textify Middle East. So I thought, well, let's just pull the two things together. So, 2017, we registered as a community interest company. So it's a non-profit organisation. So not quite a charity, but everything we do has to benefit the community in some way or another. And we do that in various ways. Ordinarily live experimental music events where we tend to favour artists from the Middle East, India, or the Indian subcontinent and Africa, but equally anybody with a political message that kind of responds to what we want to achieve and what we want people to kind of listen to.
Well, yeah, I think their voices need to be represented. I mean, I grew up in the Middle East, and I was born in Bahrain. I lived there for 10 years, and then Abu Dhabi for 2.
Okay.
So, whenever I speak to anyone about Dubai, that's the second thing I mention. First of all, how fake and artificial it is,
Sure.
and then secondly about migrant workers and how trapped some workers can feel. Westerners there as well, expats, migrants of all sorts and nationalities. So I completely agree and understand where you're coming from. How did you feel having your own work censored there?
It's very strange because I'm quite a polite person. So when you arrive and you're given, it's kind of like an all-pervading. There's nothing written down, but it's communicated verbally, or you look at the way other people are behaving, and they're not behaving as an artist would in the UK. And when I first arrived, I was quite nervous because it was a big jump going from London to Dubai. You know, it's a new life. So I wanted to fit in. I wanted to make the most of my time there. But I think within 3 or 4 months, I twigged that there was so much that was unsaid. There was so much that was disregarded. Because fundamentally, art is about communicating ideas and politics and social reform in some ways. And there was none of that. It was all decorative, and it was slightly kind of, circular. It was bland. And I had a meeting. I rented a studio from an arts organisation out there, and they gave me a set of rules about how I use the studio. And usually it's things like don't smash the windows, I don't know, whatever. But it was about who I could bring into the studio.
Wow.
You can't, there's no life drawing in I'm sure you know this, but there's no, which is a fundamental part of artist practice, is life drawing. So there's no depiction of animals, there's no depiction of people, very broadly speaking, because that's part of the tradition of arabesque art. And I did a radio interview within the first 6 months, and again I was given a set of rules, that things that I couldn't bring up on the programme. So, for example, if I am married, but if I'd had a girlfriend, I wasn't allowed to mention the fact that I wasn't married. I wasn't allowed to mention the royal family. Not that I would, but the UAE royal family rather than the British. I didn't mention either. These kind of like general kind of strange restrictions, and you do, one person in particular said to me, "Look, don't look at this as an issue. Look at it as a chance for you to kind of use your work in a way to communicate your ideas, but without being obvious," which I thought was absolutely fundamentally ridiculous. I'm not here to kind of like nudge, wink, wink. My art by its own nature is quite visceral. And I was now being told that I had to kind of like tone it all down a bit and behave myself. The thing is with that is you have to. as you know, if you're in that part of the world and if you don't toe the line, you can end up in big trouble. And by big trouble, that's imprisonment and deportation. And it really is that simple. So when we had the nights, the monthly nights we were slightly getting away with murder. The guy that owned the club that was in a hotel, because as you know, in that part of the world, all the clubs and the bars are part of hotels, aren't they? There's no kind of independent clubs or pubs on the corner and stuff like that sort of thing. He didn't have an idea what we were doing. He just said, look, you can use the space and do whatever you want. So, you know, I always had one eye on the door on the evenings themselves. You know, I was waiting for a guy to wander in a dishwasher and, you know, try and quickly shut everything down. So it was I think in some ways you do thrive under subversity and against adversity, and it became a very dynamic group. But I have to say, I got up to a point and I just thought, I can't do this anymore. So I came back to the UK. I think as much as anything, it is wearing, watching what happens to other people. I mean, I'm all right, me. You know, I can take that, what happened to me to an extent, but I had far more sympathy with watching what was happening in plain sight to the nannies of Middle Eastern families, you know, to the construction workers who were working in 45-degree heat in August, you know, and that was before the labour break came in. Women are treated as chattels there. They are third-class citizens, even the Emirati women, you know. And there's this kind of strange hierarchy with the white Westerners at the top and the Emiratis at the pinnacle. Bahrain is the same, I understand that. And I just thought, well, it's so wrong and it's so unfair that I can leave the country, but I can't leave my feelings about what happened there. I can't leave them behind, you know.
Yeah, I think it's important that you're being honest about your experiences there and what it's like, so you can shine a light to people and so they're aware of it.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the club nights, but also you've got a variety of different projects and work you've done, such as, you know, the residency in East London when you highlighted the layers of humanity, you know, in the Syrian civil war.
Sure.
And you've done partnerships with British Library as well.
That's right, yeah.
So all these different projects, what do you hope to highlight in each individual one? And
well, the residency we did, it was in Yinka Shoneber's studio. We were invited to do a month there. He runs this thing called Guest Projects, and we have sort of a core team of Touch Fly Middle East, including me and 3 or 4 others. And Emir, who's part of our kind of front line, wanted to do something to highlight the Syria and the people who are left behind in Syria. So, for example, we did a night where we talked about a group of artists in the Yarmouk refugee camp near Damascus who are filmmakers making really interesting experimental work, and they've now actually disbanded, but nonetheless it was important to kind of convey to people that even in these kind of incredibly difficult times that these people were experiencing, that the great work, great art was coming out. And that kind of chimed with that sort of month-long kind of exposition about just really making people understand that the people that suffer in Syria are the civilians, you know, the people, you know, like you and I. So that was that. The British Library thing, that was, they had seemingly found our work, and they have an archive of what they consider to be culturally useful or culturally important audio work. So we've released 2 albums. We'll talk about the 3rd one in a sec, I guess. And they wanted to archive our work as part of this kind of project that they're doing. So yeah, I mean, we kind of bounce around. We partner with various different people, but fundamentally what we do is we try and partner with charities and organisations that are like-minded. Hence me being here with Naomi.
let's talk about, like you said, the 3rd album. What was the process like? I mean, how did you collaborate?
When I came back from Dubai, I wrote a kind of wish list of charities that I'd like to work with. And we kicked around ideas. So on some of our events, we give out Forward literature, and we chose some of the mini short films that Forward had made. But Naomi told me about this book of poetry called These Are Our Friends.
That book, we'd done a creative project with the young activists that we were working with a few years ago. So they did creative writing, campaigning skills. They'd done like spoken word lessons, that type of thing. So they basically developed a book of poems around FGM, and it's a little bit broader than FGM. It's kind of about society as a whole. It's also like these are our friends. It's about not othering FGM as something that happens to people in this far off country or, this far off continent of Africa and doesn't affect people here, because the activists that were involved were all from FGM affected communities. So they may have been affected, their parents may have been, family members. So it was about not othering it and talking about like these are our people. This is affecting them. The poems are really powerful because they're all young people. They're immensely creative. Like, what is it with young people? Seriously, honestly, like even when they were just like, "Oh, I've never done this before," and you're just like, "Wow, seriously."
Incredible. It was all over the UK as well: London, Birmingham, Manchester.
Yeah, it's across the UK. So the book was amazing. We did. We had some UK artists also develop artwork around some of the poems. So we had when we launched the book, we launched the artwork as well. And then the young people performed. So a lot of them have never performed, but they had some really cool coaches. We worked with a guy called Breeze. He's quite well known. He does spoken word, and he'd done some work with them. And another guy called Rich Black, also very integral to the project. But yeah, so they developed this book, and we sold it, we launched it. We're still selling it. But when I met Simon, we were just talking about what can we do, and when I mentioned the book, he's like, I think we can do something with this.
And I said, well, why don't we make an album? I'll find my contact book is full of really interesting people who can make sound that kind of can interact with the poetry. So we went over to Naomi's office in March, I think it was, of this year, and Naomi selected a bunch of poems from the book, and people from her team read them in her office, and we recorded them. We ended up with a suite of the best poems, or what we consider to be the best poems, read by Naomi's team, so that already there was a different dimension there, because written by real people, read by real people. My job then was to take these recordings and farm them out to composers. And then 6 or 8 weeks ago, we were in a state where we could actually put the album together. So it's out now. It's only available to download right at the moment, and it's available on Bandcamp, which is the platform that a lot of people use, don't they, to release their own music. So I think the end result is incredibly powerful. I think it's one of the few things I've worked on where I can sort of take a step back and be a listener and be a punter and go, this is amazing.
I also think it's really important as well that you have artists and musicians and composers from all over the world highlighting it, because, it is an issue that is worldwide, like you said earlier.
For me, I think working with Tsetse Fly it's an honour, because I run the Musicians Unite to an FGM project at Forward, and the Artists Unite to an FGM project. So it's all about working with the arts across the board to raise awareness of this issue, because we know that through if we're working with the musicians that say a Sudanese artist or Senegalese, if they heard Youssou N'Dour, that's their biggest star ever. If they heard him say something about FGM, it changes people's perspectives, and you're reaching people that we could never reach. The arts help us reach just people we'd never reach. It's almost like watching a documentary, one of the really painful ones. It's like you feel really touched when you listen to it. It's quite heavy, but at the same time, you really understand the gravity of these issues by listening to it.
It can be a difficult listen. Certain tracks are difficult sonically, just in the sound, and I can't remember which composer it was, but when she sent me back her work, she said, look, I'm sorry, it is very hard to listen to, but this is a really difficult subject, and who am I to argue with that, So for me, as a sort of curator, I don't know, or gatherer of this stuff, when it started to come back, the individual artists' different responses was fascinating, because you have the very harsh, the final track, Mariam Reza's track right at the end, is a very harsh, dissonant, just kind of wall of sound. But then there's Mariam Nazari's 2 tracks, which are more almost like radio theatre, A Day in the Life, which is really about a woman getting up in the morning and just getting through her day. And that gives the whole project so many different sort of colours and flavours, that each track, there's no 2 tracks that are alike.
It can make you uncomfortable, but then FGM should make someone uncomfortable.
That's what I love about art, and also this album as well. It's not only the interpretation of the person; it's got so many layers. The interpretation of the person who wrote the poetry and the spoken word, and who said it as well, and the composer, and then it's what you take away as well, which is incredible. Finally, last question: if someone's listening to this and they're passionate about a subject, whether that's something that's with a charity or in their community, and they want to create art about it or do something or reach out and raise awareness, but they're nervous, I mean, what would you say to them?
See, I would always, if it's about FGM, because it is such a complex issue. Like, I've been working on it for 17 years. I literally hear something new every day. Seriously, it's unless you speak to people who know about it. So, like Forward is an African women-led organisation. So, you can trust that they know what they're doing, because it mostly affects African women. I would just talk to them, contact them, have a chat, because we are quite happy to chat with artists. Like, they'll come with an idea and they'll just be like, what do you think? Can we use that? Can you use it in your campaigns? And they're just so passionate. And you're like, yeah, like everybody can come.
I mean, yeah, in response to your question, if people are interested in getting in touch with us, by all means, just come to the website. But I think now more than ever, whether it's FGM or any other kind of social, political issues, artists should be making as much noise as possible, shouldn't they? Really, the way things are going.
2 incredibly inspirational organisations coming together there and raising awareness about the brutal and horrific treatment against women. If you want to find out more about their organisations, head on over to their websites. And if you'd like to listen to the album, head on over to Bandcamp and search for These Are Our Friends. Next up is Lauren Pears from Lauren's Travel Diary. She's a freelance writer and travel blogger, and she shares with me her experiences of cycling solo from London to Istanbul, how she was treated as a solo female traveller, her highlights and her lowlights, and what it's like to be a sustainable traveller.
Very hard to put into words, actually. It was quite a whirlwind. The first couple of weeks were really difficult, getting used to it. I felt quite lonely at times as well, because I was doing this whole thing on my own, had the whole of Europe in front of me. But I think once I got into a routine, it started to be really enjoyable and really just a lot of fun.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, to do it alone as well, that's really kick-ass. But then also at the same time, like, did people really push and emphasise that, saying, oh, woman by yourself? I mean, if they did comment like that, did you ever find it quite patronising or annoying, really? Because if a man can do it and then they emphasise a woman is doing it, it's just a bit frustrating.
Yeah, I'd say every day, not an exaggeration, every day someone I would meet would be very shocked or horrified even to learn that I was doing this on my own. And, at first I kind of just brushed it off and thought, okay, I'm doing it on my own, maybe it's a little bit unsettling for some people. But when I was in Germany, I met this guy who was cycling to Iran, which is further away than Turkey, which is where I was going. And we got talking to these other people, and they were amazed and like, oh wow, that's amazing, you're cycling to Iran, to him. But when I said what I was doing, they were like, on your own? Isn't that scary? I was like, what's the difference? Just because he's a man? That annoyed me a little bit, I have to say. It's quite patronising to think that everyone clearly thinks we're so vulnerable just because we're a woman, but I didn't die. I'm fine. It was great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're here sitting in my kitchen having a cup of tea.
Exactly.
It's frustrating. I mean, especially in Europe, when I've travelled around Asia, like, I used to get a lot of comments like that, and also bizarrely marriage proposals. And it makes you feel uncomfortable, but also that you're not good enough to travel solo. But to be honest, I know this is awful for me to say, but I wouldn't really expect it from Europe. But then I guess there's some real places in Europe that are entirely rural, and there's not many people around. You said that you were lonely. I mean, how did you overcome that sense of loneliness, but also the physical exertions you went through?
I think, usually I don't feel lonely when I travel on my own. Like, I've been sort of around Southeast Asia by myself, and there was no problems with loneliness there. I think it was because it was such an undertaking that I felt kind of like questioning myself whether I can actually do this, and there was no one with me to sort of help me along. So I think that's what made me feel lonely. But once I realised it's just pedaling every day, if you cycle to work every day, it's kind of the same thing, just you're going across Europe, right? So once I realised if you just take it one day at a time, it's fine, and the loneliness sort of went after that.
That's so great, because that's exactly how you should face kind of all life problems, really. If you break it down and you make it more simple and you take each step day by day, then it's more manageable. Looking at the physical side, how did you prepare, and what was your training like, if any?
I didn't actually really do any training.
Oh my gosh.
I was meant to, and then I just didn't. Life got in the way. I go to the gym 3 times a week normally, so I guess
That's pretty fit, yeah.
it's fair enough fit, but I don't think anything can really prepare you for cycling 7 hours a day other than to just cycle 7 hours a day. So I kind of just got fit as I went along. The first couple of weeks were very difficult physically, but after that it was not so bad. It was quite easy, actually.
Oh, fantastic, because you just got into that routine. And what inspired you to do that? What inspired you to pick up the bike? I mean, are you passionate about cycling? Did you want a new sense of adventure or a new way of travelling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really passionate about the environment and finding more eco-friendly ways to do things. And, being a travel blogger, a travel writer, I fly a lot, and that's not good for the environment. So I wanted to find a new way of, seeing things. And my dad is really into cycling. He cycled around Thailand, Laos, Cambodia.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so he kind of showed me that, this is a very feasible way of traveling around a country, and it's really fun. You travel slowly and get to see more of the country than people sort of going by bus. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll give that a go. That sounds fun.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. And did you ever cycle together and go on places around the world, or he just retold his adventures to you and you kind of got the sucker for it and the adrenaline?
Yeah, he just relayed all his adventures to me, and I thought, yeah, that sounds quite fun. I mean, my dad is quite a crazy man. He does things like sailing across the Atlantic, and he tried to climb Mount Bronte and things like that. So
wow.
Yeah, I like to think I'm at least half as adventurous as him. So
He sounds an incredibly inspirational dad as well. And you were saying earlier, when he sailed across the Atlantic, he's actually got no sailing experience.
No, not really. He lives on a boat. He lives on a narrow boat,
Okay.
but not quite the same as sailing.
So why do you think more people should travel by bike? You said, it's slow and it's better for the environment, but how could people prepare if they're so used to and so comfortable flying to then actually take the challenge and start cycling around instead?
I don't know. I mean, for me, travel is sometimes about trying new things and opening yourself up to new experiences. And if you enjoy cycling and you enjoy traveling, I think it's something you may well enjoy. It is quite a rewarding way of traveling, I find, and if you choose a route that's quite popular with cyclists, you meet lots of other cyclists, so it's a lot of fun, it's quite social. And yeah, I found it quite liberating because it forces you to live really minimalist. You can only carry what your bike can carry, and so you've got your tent, your camping equipment, and you can kind of just go where the road takes you, and it's a lot of fun.
I've done some bicycle trips in countries, but across countries I've sometimes taken local transport, and I see the beautiful lands, because you're seeing it in a much slower way, and you can stop off wherever, you can change direction, and you might meet people who sway your path. What were your main highlights of this trip?
Serbia as a country was definitely my highlight. It was very unexpected for me because I didn't know anything about Serbia. All I'd heard was negative press about it, and from the war and the NATO bombings and things like that. So that was my only perception on Serbia. But as soon as I crossed through the border, immediately everyone was so friendly and hospitable. A truck driver insisted on giving me some oranges. Someone paid for my coffee tab just because they thought my bike was really cool. And yeah, it was just a really wonderful country. Really changed my opinion on, people can say something about a country and the media can portray something, but it doesn't mean it's true. And yeah, Serbia was just amazing.
And also, some people can be quite quick to judge as well. If they haven't been there themselves and they believe one thing, they haven't made that balanced judgment. So it's wonderful that you can go there and experience it yourself. And also when I go travelling as well, I feel that you understand humanity more and you recognise the kindness of strangers. And obviously it's been highlighted in your experiences there. What would you say were the lowlights, apart from the loneliness and sometimes the physical exertion?
Lowlights. I think Hungary for me was probably my least favourite country. I really enjoyed Budapest, but I found the country itself, it's probably just the route I was taking. It was quite scenically drab, I guess, and it sometimes made the cycling quite difficult because the route was very monotonous throughout the country. And there was a point in Hungary again where the loneliness kicked in, and I think it was just because there wasn't much really to see on the journey. But there wasn't really that many lowlights, to be honest. I didn't really find anything was too challenging, or nothing bad happened. I only got one puncher as well, which was great.
What? That's
Yeah.
so impressive. Oh my gosh.
Marathon Plus tyres, I recommend them.
And you're also a travel blogger yourself. As you said before, it's a highly competitive market, quite saturated now. How can people who want to blog stand out and be unique and have their own USP? And also, should they even try if there's so many other travel bloggers out there?
I mean, I guess it depends what purpose you want to blog for. You know, if you just want to blog for fun and for your friends and family, then there's nothing stopping you.
What top tips would you give to travel bloggers with regards to like SEO and directing traffic and all those kind of fancy terms that no one really understands?
SEO is something I'm quite interested in, actually. I mean, it's a very complex field. There's lots to it. If you're looking to gain traffic through Google, it's good to find the keywords your audience is going to be searching for and make sure to optimize your content around that. I think to really stand out, if your whole blog is centered around certain keywords, that's more effective than just having posts centered around them. Because then Google sees your whole website as an authority for that certain niche.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. Has it inspired you to take on more challenges?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've really fallen in love with bicycle touring after that trip, and the Eurovelo network, which is some routes that span all across Europe. They sort of connect the whole continent with bike routes. There's one called the Eurovelo 1, which goes from Norway to Portugal.
Wow.
Yeah, and I probably won't do the whole route, but I think some part of that next year I'd like to do.
Crikey, that terrain would change dramatically from the fords in Norway and then, you know, the real heat and like rocky outcrops in Portugal. That's incredible. But also, how do you pack for that changing temperature? Would you be doing it in summer and then hopefully it would be quite similar?
I don't know, I haven't thought that far ahead really, but I think you could just buy it on the way, or have someone send it to where you're going to be, or just work with the seasons and try and go at the best time for each country.
Well, I hope you feel inspired by Lauren's adventures. As she says in her own words, you're literally just pedaling for 7 hours a day. So if you'd like to follow her journey or do something similar, head on over to our website, Lauren's Travel Diary, where you can see in-depth pictures and evaluation of the route. Finally, I speak to Jackie Adedeji from the Jackie Big Tits podcast. She talks about how her dad, as a reverend, has inspired her to preach to a different type of choir, everyday people. She highlights how her podcast is all about transparency, how she's had to alter her appearance so people don't define her or are quick to judge her because of her assets, and how she's accepted her own body, looking into self-love, self-worth, and not looking for validation from other people, but bigging yourself up and building your own confidence. What was the inspiration behind the name?
Good question. Well, first of all, my name's Jackie and I've got big tits. I've got 2 double G's, but no, that is me. That is actually what I look like. But the inspiration was transparency. I'm someone that believes in transparency and being vulnerable. And I feel like if I'm going to be vulnerable first, then people will be vulnerable with me, which is why I started the podcast, because I want to tackle subjects that people don't necessarily want to talk about. I want to be open and I want to be real and I want to be raw and I want to be candid. So I thought, you know what, let me call my podcast Jackie Big Tits, because people might look at it and think, what the hell is that about? Is that about porn? Is that about, is she talking about tits all day? But if you listen, you know, you'll understand and you get to know me, you'll understand that, like, really it's just all about transparency and bringing people together. It's about unity and me being like, yeah, I've got big tits, you know, which is taboo. I shouldn't really talk about it. But actually, no, it's not taboo to me. It's about addressing things that people aren't comfortable about, whereas I am very comfortable with it, and I'm like, you know what, I don't care. I'm going to talk about stuff. My dad doesn't like the name, but too bad, Dad. That's what it's called.
Because your dad's a vicar, reverend?
He's a reverend canon. And he was like, what on earth? And I was like, yeah, just roll with it. He's sort of cool with it now. He'll comment on the podcast and go, yeah, good episode or whatever.
Wow, so he listens.
Yeah, he does. I don't say anything too bad, to be honest. And I think I go to my dad for advice to do with like relationships, with life. So it's nothing that he's not heard before.
I'm not going to lie, it actually sounds pretty decent to have a dad as a vicar, because you can go to someone, for sort out advice like that. That's wonderful. What I really love about your podcast is that I feel that you're always taken on a journey, and it's a personal journey, and you always bring in fantastic guests that have a perspective on their own life with this personal journey. So whether that's dipping into your relationship with alcohol, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your family, relationship with work, your self-worth, your partner, that is what it's all about. It's the inner workings of a relationship with yourself and all of the other branches, which is fantastic. And what it's really wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
No worries at all. So I also feel that, as bizarre as you might hear and listen to this, that I feel that your dad has influenced you in ways that you might not have realised, because what he does is he preaches to, a church, and what you're doing is you're preaching to a different type of choir, and you're empowering and inspiring people in a different way. Have you noticed that?
Definitely. Like my dad would say, you're my twin, because me and my dad are really similar. So his audience is, most of the time it's people who are Christian or within the church, whereas mine is everyday life people. And I think, my dad is very also transparent. There's no question I can't ask him. He'll be like, I'll call him and go, Dad, why do men cheat? Or like, why are there so many sexless marriages? And it doesn't matter what time of the day. But like, right, okay, the reason is this. He won't be like, why are you asking me this? He'll just answer. And I think because of his transparency, it's then inspired me to then open conversations that are people don't want to talk about. Because then I feel like that relationship I have with my dad has really encouraged me to also be open, not just with myself, but with other people. And my goal in life is to empower people, is to help people. Most importantly is to make people realize that, like, hey, you're not alone. Like, you think you're weird? Don't worry. I'm probably like a million times weirder than you, but it's okay, because that's what brings us together, is the fact that we're all the same. This, we might be, be in different situations, but the result might have been the same as mine, and it's like, that's okay. Like, I get it, we've been there, and I want people to feel like they're not on their own. Life is messy, and so are people, and that's essentially what my podcast is about. I'm okay, I don't mind being the vocal point and being like, this is what happened to me. I don't care if someone thinks that's embarrassing or you're an idiot. It's my story, and if it means that I can then tell my story and help other people, then that's the job well done.
Is that why you chose podcasting? Because it's a more personal, intimate feel and platform?
1,000%. I think when you're not on camera, people are a lot more open. I mean, I get guests that come in and they go, oh no, I should have said that. I'm like, oh no, you should have said that. Because it's so intimate. Podcasting is so intimate. And just like I talk to, the average Bob at the bus stop, it's the same with my podcast. I'm really just talking to you candid. Who are you? What has happened to you? What are your stories? And really the key for me is that, like, I feel like when people are in that kind of podcast environment, they're a lot more relaxed because they're not being filmed, and allow people to be in an environment that's comfortable. And when they're comfortable, then they're open, which means I get fantastic content. But also, most importantly, I get to reach other people and help other people through other people's experiences.
People open up unexpectedly and they don't realise they've said that, and they feel like you said, that they shouldn't have, but actually it's a really empowering experience, and it reaches out and touches more people in the process.
Definitely.
You were speaking about your assets. Why do you think people stereotypically have a specific view on someone because of a certain way they look, and how can we break that?
What it is that I think, I can only speak as, first of all, a woman of colour and a woman with big breasts, but I would say mostly it's more, people see, someone with big breasts and, you're automatically, I feel like sometimes you're automatically judged, or you're automatically seen as some form of sexual commodity, which is very annoying, because I should feel like I can, if I wanted to wear a low cut top, I should be able to wear a low cut top. But I know that people are going to stare at me. So I hate the fact that I might have to alter what I'm wearing because people are going to judge me based on what I'm wearing. I'm not defined by the clothes that I wear. Unfortunately, we live in a society where sometimes people will look at you and think, oh, she's asking for it, or she's a slag because she's got her tits out. It's like, well, no, Patricia down the street has her tits out, but no one's saying anything because, and also, can we just like really like breasts. I'm sorry, but breasts are for motherhood. Like they're really not. It annoys me so much because you know what I mean. We all is this explicit? But we all sucked on the tit when we were born. You can cut that.
I don't think so. I don't, because it's natural and it's true.
It's
and
natural.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, do you know what I mean? It's nutrition for us. So I find it fascinating that, you know, people look at breasts and think, oh yeah, whatever. But like they're for motherhood. They're not for you to stare at and like, you know, there's days where people will walk past me and I will see them mouth, have you seen the size of her tits? Oh yeah. I'm so good at lip reading now because of it. Like, seriously. I'll see a guy turn around 2 minutes later. I'll say to my friend, look, his friend's going to turn around. His friend always does. Because his friend has said, look at her tits.
How does that make you feel?
I think now with time, I'm just like, ugh, whatever. But it's annoying, yeah. Because I'm not... Most of the time, I don't wear stuff that shows my breasts. But it gets attention anyway because people can notice. So that's why when people say stuff like, oh, well, if you don't like the attention, hide your breasts. It's like, but I tried to, but anyway. People will still say something. People will still say, I remember someone shouted out of a car once, like, she's got the fattest tits. I was like, oh my. Like,
did you say that to your mother?
Yeah. And that's what, it doesn't matter whether I hide them or not. And I don't feel like we should be crucified because we've got big breasts. First of all, we didn't ask for big breasts. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the way that we were born. So that's what's on it. It's like I didn't get a boob job and I'm like, oh my God, woe is me. I've got so much attention. I can't cope with it. Like this is the way I was born. And also to get breast surgery and all these kind of things, it's freaking expensive. It's about $7,000.
Yeah. And what did it feel growing up like that? Because I've, recently statistics show that 13-year-olds, that's the average age where they start to get attraction and attention from men. I mean, how do you handle that?
When I was growing up, it was very difficult. I'm not going to lie. I had really low self-confidence up until I was about 17. I used to wear my dad's hoodies all the time because I felt like an alien. I mean, I had the face of a child, but the body of a woman. And, everyone, most of my friends had like fried eggs and I had these big melons. And I was sort of, in my head, I thought, I couldn't understand what was going on because I felt like I'm a kid. And I remember I'd go with my friends and we'd go to the local park and cars would sort of slow down and they would honk and they go, oh, I want to, hello, talk to me. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? I'm a kid. I don't really know what you want. I don't know. But to them, I looked like a woman, but actually I was a child. So again, you're sexualized from a very young age because you look like a woman. And so that was very difficult. So it took me a while to grow to love my body and accept the fact that, look, I've got big boobs. So it was a journey of self-acceptance, but I'm here and, podcast called Jackie Big Tits.
Loud and proud. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like loud and proud, shake your areolas, Like I'm very proud of my body and I think I had to grow to love my body a lot quicker than most of my peers. But I'm also grateful for the journey because I also understand that like there's certain things I cannot wear and I'm not angry and I'm not bitter.
That's the thing. Talking about self-acceptance and self-worth and insecurities. I mean, most people I know are insecure in some way, women. And how can we learn to love ourselves more and big ourselves up more and be more confident in ourselves?
That's a really good question. I do think what we first of all need to stop doing is stop comparing yourself. We're all different. Everyone's got different body shapes. We've all got different things to offer. There's no one like you. There's just not. So first of all, comparing yourself is a waste of time. What it is, I think, is important that what we should do as women is look at the good. I think we tend to focus on the bad. I've got stretch marks. I've got thunder thighs. I've got flipping corns on my toes. Like I don't have do you know what I mean? Like you focus on all these things and it's like, but what about the amazing things about you? People will compliment you on stuff and you think, oh, I don't believe it. Start looking yourself in the mirror and thinking, oh yeah, I've got great eyes. I've got great lips. I've got a great personality. We need to start looking at the good in us, first of all, because we are our own worst critic, right? People compliment you and say, oh, you look really nice. Oh no, that old thing. Yeah, you should be like, damn right. Actually, because look, honey, you wore the outfit because it looks nice. So when people give you the compliment, accept it for starters and believe that you actually look good. Because the thing is, if you start looking and seeking validation from other people, you're never going to be happy. But it all comes from within. You need to start looking at yourself and thinking, I'm great, I'm amazing. Or I also think, which is a good thing to do, is to ask people who are closest to you, what do you like about me? What is my best asset? So that actually, I'm really good at like this, or I'm really good at that. Knowing that you're good at something is a good starting point. And then things, I think confidence-wise, you start being like, oh, okay, actually, as well, yeah, I'm really good at talking, and I'm really good at this, and I'm really good at that. You need to compliment yourself more. And be like, damn, I look good. And actually be honest and be authentic with yourself and be truthful and be like, you know what? I'm great. I'm amazing. I'm a fabulous friend. I'm a great sister. Look at your traits. Like, I think we're so quick to look at the negative points. There's a way that when someone's confident, you know it. You know, when they walk in the room and you just know. That's the type of thing, because they're sure of themselves. Be sure of the person that you are. I did that because I like it. I didn't do it because people think I should do it, or I did it because I like it. Own yourself. Own your truth. You'll never lose.
100%, I believe that you've got to be confident in yourself, and you've got to love yourself, because it's the longest relationship you're going to have with yourself, and it's going to be the strongest relationship you're going to have with yourself. But I mean, there's a lot of people out there who don't believe in their own worth, and then they end up blocking their own opportunities, or not furthering their own career, or dating some asshole. I mean, I've spoken to one of my guests before, Millicent Binks, about this. Why do we settle for people who aren't worthy of us?
Because you don't think you're worth good quality, so you settle for what's easiest. And the thing is we're all guilty of it, me included. You know, it's really hard to find a decent guy with a decent job that accepts you and all these kind of things. So sometimes we just tend to settle, well, he gives me attention, he sort of semi-cares, that's enough, because there's not enough guys out there. What I find anyway for myself, that seem like they're invested and they're committed. But the thing is that actions speak louder than words. And what is we don't tend to focus on actions. We tend to focus on words. Well, he said this to me, but what is he doing for you? That's the question. And I think as women, like, I'm a words person more than I'm an actions person. So, and I think sometimes we tend to focus on that sort of instant, like, words and like gratification and all that kind of stuff. But it's not important, because people can always tell you what you want to hear.
And also sometimes you'll fine select as well what you want to hear, because you think there's a certain vision of them.
Exactly. And we romanticize these kind of guys because we are addicted to the way that they make us feel. But what it is that's a passing emotion, because actually you're stressing out more than you are happy, but we just romanticize it because, oh, Willie said this to me, that, you know, someone might not, you know, they might ignore your text for a week, and they text you on the Friday and they're like, oh, just to say you look nice in your WhatsApp pic. You think, oh my God, I love him. But he's ignored all your other messages. He ignored the message when you said you were unhappy. And also, can I just say, it's totally okay, right? People might say, oh, you're being picky, or you're being choosy, or you're being whatever. No, it's knowing your worth. It's knowing your value. Some people might say, oh, well, I wouldn't say that. Well, that's too bad. That's what you wouldn't say. But you need to know, you need to be sure of what you want and what you can handle and what you are willing to compromise on, because not everyone is going to have all the qualities that you want, but you need to know what you do not want, for starters. If you know you don't want a guy that's like broke, or you don't want a guy that's, I don't know, he's a musician or he's what, then don't entertain guys like that if you know that's not what you want. You need to know what you want. And I think being explicit with what you want is really important. Some people might say, oh, well, you know, beggars can't be choosy, you can't be choosy. Oh, you can be choosy. It's your life, and you have to protect who you invest your time and energy in. Also, you have to, you know, be careful with who you put in your circle. If you're with someone that's sort of not worthy, so to speak, then it's because you probably don't believe you're worthy. And if you know you can do better, then why not aim for better?
Isn't Jackie so empowering and inspiring? Do make sure to have a listen to her podcast, Jackie Big Tits. She always has honest conversations on a variety of topics. I've had the pleasure of being one of her guests and talking about self-worth too. Well, that's it from my 9th episode of Let's Go Kickass today. Thank you to my fabulous guests, Simon Coates, Naomi Liberty, Lauren Pears and Jackie Adedeji. And for you for listening as well. Do feel free to subscribe, comment, rate and share. I'm Vicky Carter, and you keep kicking ass.